The first thing I noticed that morning was the cold. The side of the bed where Dean usually slept was empty, the sheets untouched. I reached out instinctively, my fingers brushing against nothing but cool fabric. At first, I told myself he probably went to the kitchen, or maybe stepped out for air. But as I sat up, still half drowsy, I caught something that made my heart pause mid-beat. A voice. His voice. Low. Careful. Whispering. I strained to hear, my body still and tense. "She doesn't suspect anything yet," he said, smooth as ever, almost soothing. My breath caught in my throat. I froze, my ears burning. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was work, maybe I misheard, but deep down I already knew. Dean never whispered during work calls. And he sure as hell never tried to hide his conversations from me. Not until now. I tiptoed back to bed before he could catch me listening, slipping beneath the covers and pretending to be asleep. A few minutes later, the bed dipped beside me, and I felt the familiar weight of him settle in like nothing had happened. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice groggy, half-laced with sleep. "Bathroom," he muttered, without missing a beat. "And the phone call?" He shifted just slightly. "Client call. Some last-minute things I needed to smooth out." His voice didn't shake. His eyes didn't flinch. But my gut screamed otherwise. That morning, while he still slept, I crept out of bed, grabbed my phone, and sat down at the kitchen table. For the first time in years, I opened our bank app. Dean handled most of our finances. I never had a reason to check. But now I needed to see. It started small. $500 here. $1,200 there. Then $750. $2,000. Not big enough to set off alarms, but not small enough to ignore either. They weren't mortgage payments. Not utilities. Not groceries. Not even business expenses. They were random, and there were too many of them. A dozen unexplained withdrawals in just a few months. I stared at the screen, a pit forming in my stomach. "What are you doing up so early?" Dean's voice came from the doorway, and I nearly jumped. I quickly locked my phone and turned to face him. He looked casual, like nothing was wrong. He stretched and reached for the coffee pot, his tone easy. "Morning. What's for breakfast?" I didn't answer immediately. I studied him, watching the way his eyes avoided mine. "I was about to ask you the same thing." He chuckled and poured himself a cup. "Guess it's your turn then." "I checked our bank account this morning." He froze. Not long. Just a split second. But I saw it. The way his hand paused over the mug. How his back tensed. "There are a lot of small withdrawals," I said slowly. "Things I don't recognize." He turned toward me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just some short-term investments. Business opportunities. Nothing to worry about." Lies. I could hear them in his voice. Feel them in my bones. He said it so smoothly, so confidently. If I hadn't already been suspicious, I might have believed him. But now? Every word he said felt like glass under my feet. I didn't confront him further. Not yet. But that moment changed everything. That whisper. That one sentence. "She doesn't suspect anything yet." It cracked something inside me. It was the moment I stopped being blind. The moment I realized that whatever Dean was planning, it had nothing to do with us. And everything to do with what he thought he could take from me. The next morning, Dean was already in the kitchen when I walked in, sipping coffee like it was any other day. He greeted me with a kiss on the temple and a casual, "Morning, babe." I forced a smile, still haunted by what I'd heard the night before. My stomach was tight, my head spinning with questions I couldn't yet answer. "But Dean?" He looked completely unbothered. Then he said something that sent another wave of unease through me. "I was thinking we should probably get our financials in order." I blinked. "Our what?" "You know, just in case anything happens. Emergency planning and all that. Like having a full list of our accounts, assets, passwords, that kind of stuff. It'd be smart to keep everything in one place." I nodded slowly, careful to keep my face neutral. Dean had never once cared about my personal accounts. We always kept a joint account for bills and day-to-day expenses, but everything else was separate, intentionally. That was how we liked it. Sure, I said, playing along. I can work on that. He smiled. Good. No rush, just figured it'd be smart. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the quick glance he gave me like he was scanning for a reaction. It was subtle, but it was there.
And it was enough.
That evening, Dean was unusually relaxed. He laughed at the TV, cracked open a beer, even offered to order Thai food from my favorite place. He was playing the part of the perfect husband flawlessly, too flawlessly. After dinner, he got up for a shower, leaving his phone on the coffee table. Face down, like always. But then, like the universe had aligned just for me, a message lit up the screen. Iliamaro. Just make sure she stays in the dark. Almost there. My body went cold. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath as I picked up the phone and tilted it just enough to see the message again. The name meant nothing to me. I had never heard of her before. But her message? It meant everything. Just make sure she stays in the dark. My hands shook as I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. The sound of the shower turning off snapped me out of my daze, and I quickly returned to the couch, forcing my body to sink into the cushions like I had been there the whole time. Dean walked back into the room moments later, towel around his shoulders, hair damp. He glanced at his phone, picked it up without hesitation, and scrolled casually. No guilt. No awareness. Did you decide on dinner? He asked, like the floor hadn't just dropped out beneath me. Not yet, I whispered. He smiled and went on like nothing had happened. But everything had. Because now I knew there was someone else. A name. A plan. And a truth I could no longer ignore. But I kept quiet. Because if Dean thought I was still in the dark, then that was exactly where I needed him to believe I was. The next morning, Dean seemed almost chipper, like he had woken up with a weight off his chest. He handed me a cup of coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, a small stack of papers in the other. Hey babe, he said lightly. Can you sign something real quick? I raised an eyebrow. What is it? Just some financial updates for tax purposes, he said, sliding the papers across the table like it was nothing. You know how the end of the fiscal year gets, gotta keep things tidy. I wasn't going to say anything, she said, stepping in, but there's a rumor going around. People are saying you took money from your accounts, that you were laundering it. My heart dropped. What? I don't believe it, she said quickly. But Dean's been talking to people.
Friends.
Lawyers. He's planting stories. I sank into my chair, my face burning. Not from guilt, but from sheer rage. Dean wasn't done. Losing the financial round had only made him more desperate. He couldn't beat me in court, so now he was trying to ruin my name, my reputation, my career. But what he did not understand, what he never had understood, was that I had fought too hard for this life to let him take it from me. He thought he was wearing me down, but he was just waking something up. By the time I walked back into Patricia's office, I was seething. I slammed a folder of screenshots onto her desk. Messages, whispers, social media posts, all laced with lies Dean had planted like seeds. Seeds meant to grow into something that would destroy me. He's trying to ruin me, I said, my voice shaking with anger. He can't win in court, so now he wants to smear me in public. Patricia calmly opened the folder and scanned through the contents. A slow smirk formed on her face. Well, this is desperate, she said, tapping her pen against the desk. But we can work with desperate. She reached for another document from her drawer. We'll start with a cease and desist. If he continues, we file for defamation. I nodded, jaw clenched. I don't want him just to stop. I want him to know I'm done playing fair. Patricia leaned back, her expression sharpening. Then it's time to stop reacting and start planning. You have more power than he realizes. Later that evening, I found Dean exactly where I expected him to be, at Lamont's, the upscale bar he always thought made him look important. He was laughing over drinks with two colleagues, looking entirely too smug for someone whose game was falling apart.
I didn't storm in.
I didn't raise my voice. I walked right up to the table, leaned down close, and whispered, "You have no idea what you've started." Dean's smirk faltered for just a second before he caught himself and leaned back casually, swirling his drink like this, was some kind of performance. He looked at me, eyes gleaming with challenge. "Let's see what you've got then." I gave him a cold smile. That was all. No drama. No scene. Because I wasn't going to waste energy reacting to him anymore. Now I was preparing for war. I left that bar with my head high and my heart steady. He thought he could take everything. He thought he could silence me. What he didn't realize was that the moment he served me those papers, he didn't just end our marriage. He gave me permission to burn everything he built on lies and manipulation to the ground. And I intended to do exactly that. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Dean in a quiet, wood-paneled courtroom. He looked polished, confident, his navy suit sharp, his expression unreadable. His lawyer stood with equal poise, a thick folder in hand. "Your Honor," she began, her voice smooth, "my client has reason to believe that Mrs. Lennox improperly moved assets to avoid equitable division in the event of divorce. We are requesting a full forensic audit of all financial transfers made in the past 6 months." I didn't flinch, didn't look away. This was Dean's final gambit: drag me through months of legal chaos, tie me up in courtrooms, and hope I broke under pressure. It wasn't about fairness. It was about exhaustion. But he didn't know I was built for storms. Patricia rose calmly, adjusted her glasses, and stepped forward. "Your Honor," she said, sliding a well-organized binder onto the judge's bench, "every transfer made by my client was done prior to Mr. Lennox filing for divorce. Legally, she was fully within her rights. There is no evidence of fraud, mismanagement, or concealment." She opened the binder, flipping to a page marked with red tabs. "Furthermore, we are submitting a formal request to dismiss this motion with prejudice, and we are asking that Mr. Lennox cover all legal costs incurred due to this baseless claim." The judge didn't speak for several long moments, their eyes moving slowly across the documents in front of them. The room was silent, thick with tension. Dean sat still, but I saw the subtle signs, the way his jaw tensed, how he kept adjusting his cufflinks, how his lawyer whispered nervously in his ear. I stayed calm, because I had nothing to hide. Finally, the judge looked up. "There is no legal basis for this motion," they said, their tone measured but firm. "The court finds no evidence of wrongdoing. The request for a full financial audit is denied." Dean's lawyer opened her mouth, but the judge continued. "Additionally, due to the lack of merit and the unnecessary expenditure of time and resources, the court orders that Mr. Lennox cover all legal fees associated with this claim." The gavel struck wood with a sharp finality. Just like that, it was over. Dean had lost again. Outside the courtroom, he brushed past me without a word. But as he passed, he muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "You think this is over? Just wait." I didn't look at him.
I didn't respond.
I didn't need to. He had underestimated me at every turn, believing I was too trusting, too naive, too slow to catch on. What he never saw coming was that I wasn't fighting to win him back. I was fighting to reclaim myself. And every time he tried to bury me deeper, he only made me more dangerous. Dean had thrown everything he could at me in that courtroom: lies, manipulation, and desperation. And I had stood tall through it all, because I had something stronger than revenge. I had the truth. And in that room, truth won. The next morning, my phone rang before I even had a chance to finish my coffee. Patricia's name lit up the screen, and the second I heard her voice, I knew something was wrong. "Sa, we've got a problem." I sat up straighter. "What now?" There was a pause, then the sound of rustling papers. "Dean and Ilya just filed a formal complaint. They're accusing you of financial fraud, claiming you doctored records to hide assets during the divorce proceedings." The air left my lungs. "They've submitted documents," Patricia continued, her voice clipped. "If the court takes this seriously, it could open a full criminal investigation." I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. "Are the documents real?" "No," she said quickly. "But they're good, really good. Someone went through a lot of trouble to make them look legitimate. They even forged transfer logs and account activity." My heart was pounding. This was more than dirty tactics. This was war. and Dean was willing to burn the entire ground beneath us to win. But, Patricia added, her voice shifting, Beatrix found something. I blinked. What? Timing, she said. The fake transfers supposedly happened in accounts that didn't even exist at the time. The timestamps are all wrong. One of the accounts you opened a full month after the date they're claiming money moved through it. It took a second to sink in. And then, like a match striking dry kindling, fire filled my chest. Not fear this time, but clarity. That was their mistake. That was how I would destroy them. By the time I got to Patricia's office, the panic had turned to resolve. She handed me a file, already thick with annotations and verification from our forensic analyst. We can prove they fabricated the entire thing, she said. We show this to the court, and not only do we clear your name, we go on the offensive. I nodded. I want to file for defamation. I want to hit them so hard they don't dare speak my name again. Patricia smiled, sharp and satisfied. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. As I left her office, the fear I had carried for weeks melted away. Dean and Ilya had pushed their luck too far. They wanted to break me, corner me, erase everything I had built. Instead, they gave me the one thing I needed most.
Proof.
Proof that they were liars. Proof that they were criminals.
And now?
Now it was my turn to burn their empire down. 2 weeks later, I walked into Patricia's office for the last time. The weight I had carried for months didn't follow me through the door. I felt lighter, not just free, but whole. Patricia stood, a thick envelope in her hand. It's done, she said, smiling. Dean signed the settlement this morning. I took the envelope and opened it carefully, like it might still disappear. I read every line, even though I already knew what it said. Dean got nothing. No money. No condo. No car. No spousal support. Every lie he told, every trick he tried, none of it worked. His motion was denied, his reputation was stained, and every fake document he submitted was now part of an official investigation.
He lost. Completely.
I looked up at Patricia, my voice softer than I expected. Thank you for not letting me break. She shook my hand, firm and steady. You didn't need me to keep you from breaking, Saw. You were unshakable from the moment you stopped playing his game. That night, my mom insisted on a celebration dinner. She lit candles, played jazz on the radio like she used to when I was little, and hugged me like I had just come back from war. In a way, I had. Beatrix brought champagne and toasted with a mischievous grin. To freedom, she said, raising her glass. And to never letting a man think he can outsmart you again. I laughed, an actual laugh, one I hadn't heard from myself in months. We ate, we reminisced, we talked about anything but Dean. Because he was done. Erased. Closed. Later that night, I stepped out onto my balcony and leaned against the rail, looking out over the Chicago skyline. The city lights shimmered like stars I could finally see again. Everything felt different. I wasn't the woman who ignored the signs. I wasn't the woman who stayed quiet to keep the peace. I wasn't the woman who needed to be rescued. I had rescued myself. My phone buzzed beside me, unknown number. I didn't even hesitate.
Blocked.
I turned back toward my laptop, opened a new document, and stared at the blank page. A new chapter. My chapter. I closed my eyes and whispered into the silence. This is my story now. And before I end this, if you're still listening, if you've been through something like this, if you've been blindsided, betrayed, broken, let me tell you something I wish someone had told me when it all started. You are stronger than you think. Strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising when no one thought you could. Sometimes the people closest to you will be the ones who lie, who cheat, who try to strip you of everything that makes you whole. But they don't define you.
Your choices do.
Your courage does. Your refusal to disappear when they try to silence you, that defines you. So, if this story meant something to you, tell me in the comments. Drop a 1 if you've ever had to fight for yourself. Tell me where you're watching from. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Because this isn't the last story I'm telling. Not even close. Until next time, stay strong. Stay smart. And never, ever, let anyone take away your power.